Hey, what's going on YouTube? So the Tesla Powerwall's been on for about 2 months now. So in this video, I want to discuss whether I believe that it was worth spending the money on them or not. So stay tuned.
Scottsdale Tower 6513 Delta, holding short runway 21, Alpha 16, requesting takeoff northbound.
Tesla 6513 Delta, Scottsdale Tower, runway 21 clear for takeoff, right turn not approved.
Cleared for takeoff, runway 21, 6513 Delta.
Okay, so right off the bat, I will tell you that no, I do not believe that it was worth spending the $18,500 that I spent to get these Tesla Powerwalls installed. So here's why. So the reason that I decided to purchase the Powerwalls is because of the price plan that I'm on with SRP. SRP is my power company. It's Salt River Project in Arizona. You have APS and SRP. I'm with SRP. So the price plan that I'm on with them is the generation price plan. And when you have solar, you have to be on this price plan. You still have peak and on-peak and off-peak times. During those peak times, you have what's called demand. If you pull any electricity whatsoever from the grid, you will get hit with a demand charge. The more you pull, the higher that charge is. So the whole goal with getting the Powerwalls was to cover that offset, to cover the on-peak times so that I would not pull from the grid at all. Well, right there was the first problem. So right after we got them turned on, we started experimenting and we did some cooking, and we may have gotten a little excessive because we had 2 burners on the stove, or not burners, but they're electric because they're not burners. But we had 2 of those going. We had the microwave, we had a toaster oven going, which I was watching the demand, or not the demand, but the power consumption, and we were probably about 4,000 watts, but not going over that. We were pretty much under that, and it would fluctuate as things would kick on and off. Each Powerwall is supposed to cover 5,000 watts. So that's a total of 10,000 watts. So I was 6,000 watts away from the peak. And actually that's continuous power. The peak, each one peaks to 7,500 watts for a limited amount of time. So we weren't up there. But it takes a few seconds for the Powerwall to ramp up, and then it ramps back down, and it's going up and down. That was the first time that we had the demand charge being on the Powerwalls, because it was like a 100-watt demand charge. But 100 watts doesn't sound like a lot, but it's not zero. It has to be zero in order for you to avoid a demand charge. So we still got the demand charge. The next problem comes into play when they're dying. So in the last 2 months, we've had more clouds than normal in Phoenix. We've had more rain and more clouds than what is typical for us. So some of those days, we were only generating 8 or 9 kilowatts. And during the winter, we're using about 20 to 22 kilowatts per day for 24 hours. So we weren't generating enough electricity to completely cover us. Also, with SRP, the time of year changes the on-peak and off-peak times. So from May 1st to October 31st, peak time is from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. But from November 1st to April 30th, it is 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Well, during the winter, the solar panels don't start ramping up and generating electricity till probably 8 or 8:30. And they stop producing at about 4:30, 5 o'clock. So those 2 peak times, majority of it falls into where we're not generating. And during the summer, electricity is generating until about 7:30, 8 o'clock, but you still have a whole hour where it's not generating. And again, that demand the amount of electricity that you pull from the grid has to be zero. in order to avoid a demand charge. So the Tesla Powerwalls, for some reason, Tesla has decided to limit the controllability for peak times. So in the app, you have it to be able to set it to self-powered mode, or you have it kind of to where there's like two options for peak times. So one of them's you kind of want to still maintain a little bit of a higher percentage of self-powered, and the other one is focusing on maximum cost savings. So with the maximum cost savings, you set peak time, but only one. You only have the option to set one peak time so that it focuses on covering those times. Well, there's the problem. With SRP, I have 2 peak times during the winter. And I would be totally fine setting it so that I could cover those 2 peak times and then not have it discharge at all the rest of the day and night. So just during those peak times they were discharging, which is the way that I have the in-phase batteries set up. In-phase gives us the option to set multiple peak times and have it change throughout the year. So I have winter and summer programmed in there, and the different peak times programmed in there, so they operate 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Tesla does not give us the option to do that. I don't know why, but as of this point, they don't give us the option to do that, which is why I don't think it was worth it for me, because that was the sole reason I purchased the Tesla Powerwalls, was to avoid demand charges. I wanted to completely eliminate demand charges. That was the sole reason. The whole home backup, that was just like a side benefit. So that was just like a bonus to me. The reason was to avoid the demand charges, which is why you see the in-phase batteries reinstalled on the wall. I was planning on selling them. I actually had them listed. A couple of the viewers that seen my videos even reached out to me. They're like, hey, are you the same guy that I've seen on YouTube? And yes, I had them listed on eBay for a little while and on OfferUp, and I was trying to get like $3,500 for the pair and the brackets, but ended up unlisting them because I still need them, because the Powerwalls do not have the programming to allow me to set up for peak times. So these have continued, I have continued to still need the in-phase batteries to cover some of those peak times, to at least get my demand charges lower. So now I'm going to show you the apps so you can see exactly what I'm talking about with the programming and the ability in the apps to be able to program them for peak and off-peak times. All right, so I'm going to start here with the Tesla app. So here you can see the percentage of the Powerwalls. You can see that there's 2 of them. And hopefully you can see you can see this little line right here. You can see that it's discharging right now. So then we go into the power flow. This is my favorite portion of the Tesla app. I like this part of it right here. But when we go into the graph, it's okay. The way that the in-phase app used to be better, but then they updated it and made it a whole lot worse. So up here, this is what we're using. Then I can click on that. That shows my solar production. That's what the Powerwalls are doing. When it's down here, that means they're charging. When it goes up, that means they're discharging. This one is the grid. So when it's up, that means we're importing. And when it's down, that means we're exporting. So the Powerwalls did not reach 100% today because it's been cloudy the last couple of days. Like we go to yesterday and we see the solar production, it was not that great. So the Powerwalls didn't charge much yesterday. So then when we scroll down, you can see the numbers there. What we used, the solar, that's what we've used so far today, 17 kilowatts. Solar, we produced 28, 18 of which has gone to the Powerwall, and then there's the grid at the bottom there. Okay, so when we go to customize, this is where you can control the batteries a little bit. You can have it for backup only, self-powered, and I reserve 10% for power outages. Advanced is the time-based control. Storm watch allows the battery to, it watches for storms. So if there's the chances for storms, then the Powerwalls will charge and try and have as much power as possible for backup. The problem that I have with that is the one time that it did it, it was right before peak time, and it pulled like 7.4 kilowatts, so like 7,400 watts from the grid. If that had happened during peak time, I would have been pissed, because it would have been the highest demand charge I would have ever had. And then when I tried to turn Stormwatch off, it would not turn off. It was probably at least a week before it allowed me to turn it off. But I won't have it on because of that, because if it had happened during peak time, I would have been mad. Okay, so here I've selected the advanced, which gives me time-based control. You have a balanced, which it kind of tries to keep somewhat of a higher self-powered score. And then you have cost saving, which focuses on maximizing savings. So we go to edit price schedule. It only gives the ability to set one peak time. So it allows you to do a peak time and then a shoulder time, which SRP does not have a shoulder time. And I guess a shoulder time is kind of like a moderate. It's not like as high of a peak price, but it's not as low as off peak. Only gives you the ability to do one peak time. It also does not give you the ability to have it change for seasons. And this is where my frustration comes in. Tesla needs to update that. I need to be able to set it to be able to change for the season and for multiple peak times. Okay, so this is the in-phase app. This is more recent. Now, the way that this is laid out is kind of neat and everything. It does look a little confusing, and I think it's a little busy. But my problem is on this page. So this is basically your graph. This is where my frustration comes in. So on the graph here, whenever you open it, every time you have to toggle this on, import it and export it, and then you also have to toggle on the battery every time you open it, which is irritating. Second of all, this graph is really busy. You used to be able to just put your finger on here and select, and you can see the line scrolling across there. First of all, it's really jumpy. It's really slow. Second of all, like, you can see the battery, how it's charging. Well, you used to be able to take your finger and put it on the graph and get the line, and it'll pop up and it'll show you what time that is. So this is 10:15 to 10:30. Used to show you the percentage that the battery was at that time. It no longer does that. They took that away for some reason. They made this a whole lot busier, and it does not work as good. It's a mess. I've contacted them and told them how horrible it is, but obviously they don't listen to their consumers. And I mean, you can see how jumpy this is. It doesn't respond. Look at this. It just doesn't respond. It's horrible. And I wish they would change it back. The part that I do like is when I go to the array, I can see what each individual panel is producing. So I can see if there might be a problem with either the panel or an inverter or something like that. And you can see for today, we're up to almost 32 kilowatts for the day. You may or may not notice that the panel layout has also changed, but that'll be for a future video. Okay, so here we are in the In-Phase Toolkit app. We go to the edit button, and right here you can see the peak times are set for summer, for May through October. Rate differs between seasons. Rate differs between weekday and weekend. Rate differs between seasons. Tesla does not have that. So we have the off-peak cost entered here. We have the peak from 2 to 7:59 p.m. And then the weekend is completely off-peak. And then for the winter, November through April, we got our off-peak. Peak 1 from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. Peak 2 from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Look at that. We can even add a weekday peak 3. And then the weekend is off-peak. But you can see right here that we can add peak times here. So for the summer, there's only one peak time, but if I had another one, I could add another one right here. So the adding a peak time to and rate difference between seasons, those are two very important things that Tesla is missing. And until they add those, the system was a waste of money. Okay, so this is the usage from SRP. I'm logged into my account, and as you can see, these are my demand. So as you can see, the power walls were turned on at the beginning of November, and you can see how they reduce. There's a lot of blank here. However, it's not zero. So like right here, it's 0.2, so that was 200 watts. That's still a demand. And 100 watts, that's not zero, so it would be demand. And for the month, it goes off from the highest demand. So even if it was blank for the entire month, and then it showed 100 watts, I would get a demand charge. So as you can see currently, the high on-peak demand is 1.3 kilowatts, so 1,300 watts. That occurred on Monday, December 9th. Now that's because there's been a lot of overcast, so you can see in here there's a bunch of demand in this part of November. There's several days of demand here. There's several days of demand here and here. So these higher ones are happening when the batteries die, and usually it happens in the morning when we're getting those demand charges, because by morning the batteries are dead and it can't cover the peak time from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. Now these low ones down here, these 100 and 200 watts, that's because the batteries aren't keeping up or something. I think also it has to take in some power from the grid just so that it can see that the grid is still there. So that's just an inherent flaw. Like, I'm not going to go out there and hit the main disconnect from the grid every time there's a peak time to ensure that we don't have a demand charge. That would be ridiculous, but if I could program it in the gateway so it disconnects from the grid during peak time, I would, because then I would make sure that there's no demand charges. But if the batteries died, then we'd lose power for the whole house, which is why we need the ability to set those multiple peak times in the power walls to make sure that it's only discharging during peak times. That's fine if I'm importing overnight because it's off peak and the generation throughout the day would compensate for that. I need it to be covered during the peak times because right now I'm getting dinged with demand charges, and you can see that I got a 1.3 kilowatt demand charge right here. I'm not okay with that. Okay, so I found an old clip of a video that I previously recorded. This is the way the InPhase app used to look. So this is the home screen. So it's got big tiles, it's very clean and very clear. So this is the graph page, and when you actually drag your finger across that graph, it'll show you the time of day and where the battery percentage is at that time that it was reporting. So you can see that the graph is a lot cleaner, a lot nicer to look at, and it works a lot smoother. This is the way that the app used to be. It was better when it was like this. They updated it and it turned it into like it's unusable now. It's horrible. I don't like it. I wish they would change it back. I know they won't, but this is the way it should be, and this is the way it was working a whole lot better. So until Tesla gives us more programming abilities for peak times, for summer and winter months, and more than one peak time, I can't recommend them. For my reasoning of avoiding demand charges, I cannot recommend them. I spent $18,500 to avoid demand charges, and it didn't work. So if Tesla is watching this video, you need to update the programming to give us more ability and more control over it, to give us more peak times and a difference between summer and winter months. Because right now, I can't recommend these batteries. For me, it was not worth spending the money. I would have been better off either buying more of the in-phase batteries or possibly waiting until the in-charge system comes out. But right now, I can't recommend them. The installation was September 24th and 25th of 2019. It took 3 weeks to get SRP out here to commission them so we could turn them on. And of course, once they got out here, they denied us because they said that they did not have current plans, which was a load of garbage because Tesla sent it to them. And conveniently enough, the only 2 people that could approve them, one of them was off that day and the other one was out in the field. Whatever happened to being in 2019 where that person could receive them out in the field, because the person that was here had a laptop with them. So wouldn't you think the other person would have a laptop with them so they could receive them and approve them right there? Nope. So it took another 3 weeks to get somebody else out here to get them commissioned. And that guy said that he would have approved it, turned it on, and been like, just send me the plans by the end of, it was a Friday, so he's like, just make sure that I have the plans by the end of the day on Monday. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to come back out and turn them back off, pull the meter or whatever, which makes sense to me. But instead, that guy's like, nope, denied. So it took a total of 6 weeks to get SRP to turn them on, which is ridiculous. So for the reasons that I purchased the Tesla Powerwalls, I can't recommend them if you are wanting to do the same thing. Currently, it will not cut it. It won't do the job until they update the programming. Hopefully you found this video informative. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more I Can Do It Myself videos.